I saved for nearly a year to buy my daughter a $2,000 laptop. And in less than a week, my sister's kids destroyed it in a backyard fire. I still don't know if I'll ever forgive her. Before we dive into it, tell me in the comments where you're from. I love seeing the different places people tune in from. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. I'm Leah, 35, from Ohio. I've been a single mom since Maya was 4, and if I'm honest, it hasn't been easy. I juggle 2 jobs, days at a dental clinic, nights at a diner, so my girl can have the kind of life I didn't. She's 14 now, smart as hell, and crazy about graphic design. Her art teacher says she's got a real shot at a scholarship if she nails this upcoming school project. The problem was, her old Chromebook could barely open a file without freezing, and the kind of laptop she needed cost more than my rent. So, for nearly a year, I pinched every penny. No new clothes, no takeout, skipped birthdays for myself. When I finally had enough, I bought the laptop, sleek, silver, and fast enough to make Maya's eyes light up like Christmas morning. The way she hugged me made every overtime shift worth it. A few days later, my sister Carrie called. She's 38, recently divorced, with 3 kids who seem to run on pure chaos. Evan, 10, Josh, 8, and little Lily, 6. She said her heater broke and asked if she could crash at my place for a weekend. I hesitated because history has taught me that a weekend with Carrie usually means a headache and missing stuff, but she's my sister. I said yes. The first night, it was like a tornado hit my house. Toys everywhere, food on the floor, and Carrie sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, smirking when Maya showed her the laptop. "Must be nice," she said, smiling that tight smile that never reaches her eyes. I should have known then. Jealousy always has a way of catching fire. The weekend started with noise, the kind that doesn't stop once it begins. Carrie's van pulled into my driveway like a storm warning, and within seconds, her 3 kids poured out, arguing over who got to carry the tablet that was already cracked down the middle. I forced a smile as they ran past me, shoes still on, stomping through the hallway. Carrie followed behind with that exaggerated sigh she does when she wants sympathy. "Heater's dead," she said, shaking her head. "Can you believe my luck?" I told her she could stay until Monday, though my gut twisted as I said it. Every memory of borrowing incidents came rushing back. Missing sweaters, half-used gift cards, the time she accidentally took my favorite necklace. But what could I say? She's my sister, and her kids had nowhere else to go. Maya kept mostly to her room, the new laptop glowing on her desk like a treasure she was afraid to touch too much. She was working on her contest design, a digital painting that, honestly, looked professional. Every time I walked by, I saw her shoulders bent forward, focused, earbuds in, blocking out the chaos downstairs. I envied that. Meanwhile, Carrie's boys had turned my living room into an obstacle course. Something broke every hour, a picture frame, then the remote, then one of Maya's old ceramic projects. Each time, Carrie barely looked up from her phone. "They're just kids," she'd mumble, not even glancing at the mess. By Saturday night, I was clenching my jaw to keep from snapping. Carrie sat at my kitchen table, sipping wine, eyes flicking toward the hallway where Maya's room was. "You've really built yourself a nice little life here," she said, voice coated with something between admiration and resentment. "Must be nice, having extra cash for fancy stuff. I can barely afford socks." I told her it wasn't like that everything I had came from working myself into exhaustion. She laughed softly, tilting her glass. "Still," she said, smirking, "you've changed, Leah. You used to be humble." I just nodded, staring at the mess around us, wondering how much damage one weekend could really do. The smell hit me first, sharp, chemical, wrong. I was standing over the stove, stirring sauce, when a curl of smoke drifted through the window above the sink. At first, I thought maybe the neighbors were grilling, but then I heard laughter, high-pitched, reckless, coming from the backyard. I dropped the spoon and ran. The air outside was thick and gray. In the middle of the yard, Carrie's boys were tossing things into the fire pit, plastic toys, papers, bits of cardboard. Flames snapped and hissed. For a second, I couldn't process what I was seeing. Then something silver caught the light, half buried under ash. My stomach went cold. It was the laptop. "Maya!" I screamed, already moving toward the pit. She must have heard the panic in my voice because she was out the door in seconds. Her scream when she saw it was raw, animal. She rushed forward, grabbing for it with her bare hands before I pulled her back, shouting her name. The heat was too much. The plastic was already warping, the keyboard melting into itself. The smell of burning circuits filled the air. Carrie came out then, shouting at her kids like a woman caught mid-performance. "What are you doing? Are you out of your minds?" Her tone was loud, but her face, God, her face was calm. Almost blank. No rush to put the fire out, no real fear. Just annoyance. I grabbed the garden hose, spraying until the smoke hissed and thinned. Maya was sobbing beside me, her hands trembling. I turned to Carrie, my voice shaking. "What the hell happened?" She shrugged, pulling Lily behind her. They didn't know it was something important. They were just playing. Playing? My voice cracked. "That was her laptop, Carrie." Carrie's mouth tightened. I said, "I'm sorry. You shouldn't have left it where they could find it." I just stared at her, the truth settling in slow and heavy. Her kids might have thrown it in, but she'd lit the fire long before that, just not with matches. I stood over the fire pit, water dripping from the hose, steam rising in ghostly curls. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I dug through the blackened mess. The metal casing had twisted into strange shapes, keys fused together, the screen cracked and melted. There was no saving it. All that work, every shift, every sleepless night, it all sat there in ashes. Maya knelt beside me, her breath coming in broken gasps. She reached out, fingers trembling, then pulled back when the soot smeared across her skin. "It's gone," she whispered, voice small and cracked. I tried to speak, to say something comforting, but nothing came out. She stood suddenly and ran inside, her sobs echoing through the house like a wound you couldn't bandage. Carrie hovered near the back door, arms folded, expression unreadable. When I finally turned to her, she let out a sigh. "Leah, it's just a thing," she said, tone flat, as if the words might somehow settle the air between us. "Just a thing." I could barely keep my voice steady. "Do you have any idea how long I worked for that? How many nights I came home too tired to stand?" She looked away, eyes flicking toward her kids, who were now huddled by the fence pretending not to listen. "I can't replace it, Leah. You know I'm broke. I didn't tell them to do it. It was an accident." I laughed then, sharp and bitter. "You let them run wild in my house. You watched them ruin everything and did nothing. That's not an accident. That's who you are." Her expression hardened. "You're being dramatic. It's a laptop, not a life." Something in me snapped. All the guilt, exhaustion, and resentment boiled up at once. "Get out," I said quietly. "Take your kids and leave." She blinked, genuinely surprised. "Leah, it's late. Where am I supposed to?" "I don't care." I cut her off. "You don't get to stay here another night." By the time the van pulled away, the backyard was silent again. Only the faint glow of the dying embers remained, flickering weakly against the dark. The next few days felt heavy, like the house itself was grieving. Maya barely spoke. She spent most of her time in her room, lights off, sketchbook untouched. When I tried knocking, she'd mumble something about being tired or not hungry. The silence between us ached more than the loss itself. One night, I found her sitting on her bed, staring at the empty desk where the laptop used to be. "I shouldn't have left it there," she said quietly. "It's my fault." I sat beside her, trying to keep my voice calm. "No, baby. This isn't on you." But she wouldn't meet my eyes. "You worked so hard for it. I ruined everything." Hearing that shattered me. I wanted to fix it, to promise I'd buy another, but we both knew I couldn't. After she fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone, Carrie's name glowing on the screen. I called. No answer. I tried again the next day, and the next. Each time, it went straight to voicemail. She knew I was reaching out and chose silence. A few days later, a friend from work texted me. "Saw your sister at the taproom last night. She was laughing about the laptop thing. Said you lost it over some stupid computer." I read that message twice, then again, until the words blurred. So that was it. No guilt, no apology, just her turning my pain into a joke. Something inside me shifted that night. The hurt hardened into something colder, sharper. I'd spent my life forgiving her. Every lie, every broken thing, every selfish act, because that's what family's supposed to do, right? But standing there in my quiet kitchen, dishes still unwashed, my daughter upstairs crying herself to sleep, I realized forgiveness had only ever protected her, not us. This time, I wasn't going to let it slide. Not the lies, not the excuses, not the smirk behind my back. She thought I'd move on like always. But she had no idea who she'd just burned. It started small, just a thought that wouldn't leave. Every time I pictured Carrie laughing about the laptop, something inside me twisted tighter. I told myself I didn't want revenge, just fairness. But fairness felt a lot like payback when you've spent your life cleaning up someone else's mess. I knew things about her, things most people didn't. Working at the county admin office meant I saw more paperwork than most would ever want to. Years back, she'd bragged about working the system, collecting support while hiding side income. She'd laughed about it at family dinners, saying, "If the state wants to hand out free money, who am I to say no?" I'd brushed it off then, thinking she was just exaggerating. Now the memory made my jaw clench. That week, I started gathering things. Old texts where she joked about lying on forms. Screenshots of social media posts showing trips she claimed she couldn't afford. Even a voice message where she bragged about skipping payments for her ex because they'll never catch me. Piece by piece, I built a quiet file, a map of every corner she'd cut while pretending to be the victim. Each night, after Maya went to bed, I sat at my laptop, the glow of the screen washing the room in pale light. My finger hovered over the form longer than I care to admit. It wasn't just a click, it was a line. I whispered to myself, "This isn't about revenge. This is justice." But deep down, I wasn't sure I believed it. When I finally hit submit on the anonymous report, the room went completely still. My chest felt tight, breath caught between guilt and relief. I sat there for a long time, listening to the hum of the fridge, trying to convince myself I hadn't just crossed a point of no return. By morning, I felt hollow, but steady. The sun came through the window like nothing had changed. Maybe nothing had yet, but soon I knew something would. 2 weeks passed before I heard anything. Life had slipped back into a dull rhythm: work, dishes, silence. Then a text came from a mutual friend. "Did you hear about Carrie? They're auditing her case. She's freaking out." My hands went still over the keyboard. It was short, almost casual, but I read it 3 times. That tightening in my chest returned, the mix of fear and grim satisfaction that made me feel both powerful and ashamed. By the weekend, the news had spread. Her benefits were frozen while the investigation played out, and she'd been given notice to vacate her subsidized apartment. Friends said she'd been calling everyone she knew, crying that it wasn't fair, that someone had set her up. I kept my phone face down and said nothing. That Sunday afternoon, I heard a knock at the door, sharp, frantic. When I opened it, Carrie stood there, makeup streaked, hair tangled, the kids waiting in the car behind her. "Leah, please," she gasped. "I don't know what to do. They're taking everything. I just need a place for a few days. Please, you're my sister." For a moment, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked small, cornered. I could hear the kids fighting in the car, Lily crying softly. Part of me wanted to let her in, to forget everything, to be the bigger person again. But then I saw her eyes, still searching for pity, not responsibility. I stepped aside just long enough to grab a folded stack of old blankets from the hall closet. I handed them to her without meeting her gaze. "That's all I can give you." Her mouth fell open. "Leah, please don't do this." I didn't answer. I just closed the door slowly until the click of the latch cut her voice off. When I turned, Maya was standing at the end of the hallway, silent, eyes wide. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. I brushed my hands together, more to steady myself than anything else. "Some fires," I said quietly, "burn more than one thing." She came back 3 days later, pounding on my door so hard the pictures rattled on the wall. I didn't have to look through the peephole to know who it was. When I opened it, Carrie stood there shaking, her face red and streaked with sweat, fury practically rolling off her. "You did this to me," she spat. "Don't even try to deny it. You're the only one who knew enough to get me in trouble." I leaned against the doorframe, keeping my voice even. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The hell you don't," she screamed, stepping closer. "You think you're better than me? You've always hated that I get attention, that people like me more. Well, congratulations, you finally got what you wanted. They froze everything. My kids and I have nothing." Her words came out like venom, but underneath it, I heard something else, fear. Still, I didn't look away. "You lost everything because you lied, Carrie. Don't put that on me." She laughed bitterly, eyes glistening. "You think you're some hero now? You've always been jealous, just like Mom said. Miss Perfect Leah with her responsibility and her rules. You never could stand seeing me happy. That broke something in me." "Happy?" I snapped, voice rising. "You've lived off everyone around you your whole damn life. You take, and when there's nothing left, you play the victim. You burned my daughter's future and called it an accident. You don't get to cry about what you lost." For a moment, neither of us moved. The air between us was thick with every word we'd never said, every apology that never came. Then she squared her shoulders, jaw tight. "You'll regret this," she hissed and turned, marching toward her car. The sound of the engine faded down the street, leaving only the ticking of the clock in the kitchen. My hands were shaking when I finally shut the door. The silence afterward felt heavier than the shouting had. I slid down the wall, pressing my palms to my face, and for the first time since the fire I cried, not out of anger, but from the weight of it all finally crashing down. Weeks passed, and the noise of everything that had happened began to fade into something quieter. The house felt different, emptier, but also calmer. Maya still kept to herself most days, but I started noticing little changes. She stayed after school more often, saying she was just finishing something in the computer lab. I didn't press. I figured she needed her own space to heal. One Friday evening, she came home later than usual, holding an envelope. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen since before the fire. "Mom," she said, trying to sound casual but failing. "Remember that design contest?" I nodded, unsure where this was going. She unfolded the letter and handed it to me. My throat tightened as I read the words "Congratulations, scholarship recipient." It wasn't a huge prize, just enough to cover a new laptop and a little more. But to us, it felt enormous. I looked at her, speechless, and she laughed, a real laugh, like she'd been holding it in for months. "I used the old desktop at school," she said. "It was slow, but it worked. I just didn't want to give up." I pulled her into my arms before she could say another word. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The relief hit me all at once, pride, guilt, gratitude tangled together. I whispered, "I'm so proud of you," but it came out as a sob. She leaned back just enough to meet my eyes. "Mom," she said softly, "we didn't need to get even. We just needed peace." That sentence hit deeper than she could have known. I thought about all the energy I'd spent trying to make Carrie pay, how hollow it felt afterward. Maya hadn't just rebuilt what was lost, she'd outgrown it. As we stood there, letter crumpled between us, I realized the fire hadn't taken everything. It had burned away something else too. The part of me that still believed revenge could ever feel like justice. Months rolled by, the kind that blend together when life finally starts settling again. Word spread that Carrie had packed up and moved a few towns over. No calls, no messages, no new rumors, just silence. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to brace myself every time the phone buzzed. That peace, fragile as it was, felt like a small miracle. Maya and I built our rhythm back piece by piece. I picked up a few extra hours at work. She spent weekends sketching and tutoring younger kids in art. The house began to feel warm again, less like a reminder of everything we'd lost and more like ours. There were still nights when guilt crept in, when I'd lie awake wondering if I'd gone too far. But I reminded myself that standing up for us wasn't wrong. Maybe the way I did it was messy, but survival rarely looks neat. When the package finally arrived, it didn't feel like redemption, just a quiet step forward. The new laptop sat on the kitchen table, still sealed in its box. This time, I didn't rush to open it or make a big surprise of it. I called Maya in and handed it to her. "You do it," I said. "It's yours." She peeled back the tape carefully, smiling in that soft, contained way she does when something really matters. As the screen flickered to life, its glow spread across her face, reflecting in her eyes. She looked older somehow, steadier. I sat back, watching her fingers move across the keyboard, the hum of the machine filling the quiet room. My chest ached, not from pain anymore, but from something heavier and truer, acceptance. The revenge hadn't brought pride. It hadn't healed what burned. But it had stopped the constant feeling of being small, of letting people walk through the wreckage and call it kindness. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of smoke from someone's fireplace down the street. I watched the light from the laptop dance against the wall where the fire once raged, and for the first time, it didn't hurt to look. Do you think I did the right thing by cutting my sister off, or should I have given her another chance? Tell me what you think in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories like this.